For today's episode of Simply Stated, we'll be discussing the old classic film Schindler's List from 1993. The film won a number of Academy Awards and was actually directed by American director and filmmaker Steven Spielberg, who is listed as being of Jewish ancestry himself. The film also starred Tom Hanks, an American producer, writer, director, screenwriter. He's credited with all those, at least in the media, and is considered an American celebrity, a U.S. celebrity, if you will. The story itself details the lives of a number of Jews that were saved by a man named Oskar Schindler during the Nazi Holocaust, when a number of Jews were actually sent to concentration camps and killed. A number of them were killed in the gas chambers under the direction of Hitler and the Nazi Party of Germany. And this was all centered around World War II, of course. Here's the reality. The idea was that Oskar Schindler, as far as the film goes, saved all these people's lives from being beaten, tortured, and killed for being Jews or for being part of resistance against the Nazis in Germany. The reality is that they were actually people who were put aside to work for him for free. They were not paid, they were not compensated properly, and were in fact, it was a bizarre situation of people who could have gone one way and instead thought they were being saved, only to be told that they would then be victims of trafficking for far longer than anyone would have expected or even wanted to believe. And I note all of this because the film itself was put forward in the community I lived in Iowa at the time as an example of what would happen to many of us if we did not simply choose to work for free for a company that was being developed that today is considered a shell company that the U.S. government is actually still trying to take apart, that I ended up actually working for 3 decades. So over 30 years of my life, I worked for free and was not compensated for my work for what is supposed to be considered a major U.S. entertainment company. It was actually run by people from Russia, Iran, and the Chinese CCP. If you're wondering what all this means, well, it's certainly an explanation for some of the U.S. issues today and why the Department of Defense has taken so much more time and effort into trying to combat Russia and China because of their aggressiveness in setting up operations here in the U.S., in the continental U.S., in the 50 states, labor trafficking kids, drugs, and setting up operations where they try to labor traffic people. Don't pay them for the work, don't pay them adequately, don't provide benefits, and are abusive. It's simply an issue that has to be discussed because as a child, film was put forward to me as an option for me. Either I went to work for this company for free and was trafficked, and that meant providing scripts, songs, ideas, acting, modeling, even producing, all of it. Or I would simply also be sent to another type of concentration camp here in the US. This actually happened. And it actually took until the age of 39 for me to get away from some of these people and get protective orders against them, living in the state of Virginia. Part of the reason I made the thought project, just so you know, and also have created Simply Stated, is to address some of the issues of labor trafficking in the U.S. because it's such an insidious and terrible issue. At the same time, it's one that's being combated today in the most harshest methods the U.S. can come up with because it has to be, and it's simply out of control. And at the same time, it's one that is ultimately at the forefront of most people's minds when they start to consider U.S. policy. If you're wondering why the Department of Defense is developing more weapons against China and Russia, why we're concerned about the Ukraine or Israel or the other issues, it quite simply goes back to that basic issue that China and Russia have no problem coming into the U.S., especially the Russian mafia, and setting up operations here and trying to traffic people. Schindler's List is nothing more than a confectionery item put together for what I perceive today to be just a completely fake show, the Academy Awards, which most people don't even bother to watch anymore. And frankly, I found out eventually that Tom Hanks is actually Iranian. So when you take it into the context that the original posters showed him with this bizarre glaring face, the show and the movie itself become a type of threat. It doesn't actually seem like a fun movie about people whose lives were saved or redeemed from being thrown to the gas chambers. It actually comes off as a fair threat. It certainly did to those of us who were children when I was growing up in Iowa and was used that way. And that is all for this episode of Simply Stated and the history of the film Schindler's List and its implications for modern culture. Happy holidays.